So the first step for my festive Swedish bread, called Vörtbröd, if I've said that correctly, is to add Julmust into this pot to heat up. Julmust is like a malt beverage, kind of a little bit like Sweden's version of root beer. I'm just trying to open it without making it go everywhere. So this was a request from a viewer who said, can you make Vörtbröd with dinkelmeal, which is spelt flour in Swedish. So into the pot I'm going to add 400 grams. If you can't find this kind of beverage in your country, you can use molasses or malt extract with water. So we're not adding water or milk or anything, it's just this. So I'm going to heat it up gently for about 5 to 10 minutes. And here we're going to add a little bit of extra syrup. I'm using dark syrup. You can use molasses, you can use honey, something like that. That's 100 grams. I'm going to pop that in now and just get those heated up together. So that was 1/3 cup or 100 grams. You can go a little bit less if you're trying to cut back on sweetness because it is quite a sweet spiced bread. So I'm looking at getting this about 40 degrees Celsius. I've got my little temperature gun. It's only at 25 now. It's almost there, warm to touch. Yeah, it's at 40. I'm going to turn that off. And now I'm going to add in some butter. I'm doing 75 grams of an unsalted butter, or 1/3 cup. You can use oil, but I drop it back to about 60 grams. I just want to melt that in. If you've got yeast that needs to be activated, you can add the yeast in now and let it rest for 10 minutes, but my yeast doesn't need to be activated, so I'm going to add it in with my flours. So I'm going to use my big KitchenAid mixing bowl today, and I'm going to do 2 types of spelt flour. I've got whole grain spelt flour, 350 grams, and I've got white spelt flour, also 350 grams. I've got my dried yeast, which is 7 grams or 2.5 teaspoons. I've got some salt here, just white, 1 teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of dried ginger. The spices are adaptable. You can use whatever spices you like. I've got 2 teaspoons of freshly ground black cardamom, 1 teaspoon of ground cloves, and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And if you don't like any of those, just swap them out. You could do just cinnamon, or you could do only cloves. If you're in the UK or Australia, you can do mixed spice. So I'm just whisking that together. And here I've got some lemon zest. I always zest my lemons when I'm going to use them to squeeze the juice. So I have the leftover zest, but you can use orange zest if you like. So my butter's not completely melted here, but it's going to be okay. I'm just going to pour all that in. I've got my KitchenAid mixer here. I'm just bringing it into the camera. I'm going to mix all that on the KitchenAid. Now we haven't quite got the clean bowl today. I'm going to go in and add a tiny bit more flour today, just to make sure my dough is not too sticky. So I'm going to add another 1/4 cup, which is about 35 grams. That's the clean bowl that I wanted. Look at that. Now I need to cover this and rest it for about 45 to 60 minutes, depending on the temperature in your house. So I'm going to wait till it rises and it doubles in size. Whoops, I just noticed some flour. I'm just going to give it one more stir. Sometimes with the big bowl, the flour gets trapped down the bottom. But I think we're good now. Yes, that looks good. Okay, I'm going to cover it with the lid. or you can use cloth, plastic wrap, whatever you've got. This bowl comes with a lid, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to set my timer for 45 minutes, then come back and check it. So it's been 45 minutes and I'm just checking on my dough. Look at that, that looks really great. So I'm going to remove it. It's nice and risen. Pop it on my floured surface here. And I'm going to add the raisins now. Now you can leave these out if you don't really like them, or you can add cranberries. I love raisins, and so I'm going to add them in. I actually increased it from the original inspired recipe. I'm going to add 70 grams. So I'm just putting my dough here. Okay, it's sticky, but it's not super moist, which is great. That's perfect. The first time I did it, I added too much liquid. If you're converting from wheat recipes into spelt flour, you need to reduce the liquid. Spelt flour absorbs more water, so you need less. So I'm just going to fold this over to add those raisins. And because we're making 2 loaves, I'm going to divide it into 2. I've prepared these little silicone tins. I wanted to do them in this, even though they might actually expand a little bit on the sides, but I'll show you my tip that I do, just because they're matching. I don't have 2 other matching metal tins, but I'm going to use my scales because I want to make sure I've got 2 even loaves. You can do it freeform, but I just find with spelt flour it needs a bit of help in the oven, so I like to put it into a form. But if you don't mind if it just comes out a bit flat, you can do it, just shape it and pop it in. So that's just under 1400, so I'm going to do 700 loaves, 700 loaves. Let me just try and divide that into 2. 739, so I just need to add a bit off, take a bit off. 697, that'll be fine. And this one will probably be a little bit more. 697, how's that? What a good day. So I'm just going to give it a little bit more of a shape. You don't need to do too much. I'm just knocking some of the air out, and I'm just doing a kind of like a free form fold. I'll pinch it a bit to bring that together. Nothing too fancy. And then I'll grab my loaf tin, pop it in there. And then it's just going to shape again in here for another rest for about 30 to 40 minutes. So I'll do the same with this one. Whoops. Bring it on the bench. Just fold it over, shape it, pinch it, sorry. I forgot to pinch it. Just pinch it so you've brought it together. Look, I'm no expert, I just do it kind of a rough way, and then pop it into my tin. So they're nice 2 matching loaves. And then I'm just going to, it'll be easier to put them in these plastic bags instead of trying to put plastic on top. So I'm just going to slide this over. Before we start baking them. And 15 minutes before I want to bake them, I'm going to put my oven on. So what I'll do, I'm going to put them on this baking tin here for the oven. But I'm going to try and angle them with a metal tin to give it a bit of structure. So I'll push one like that. Actually, I'm going to do it in the middle. And we'll come back once they've risen. So I'm back to pop my bread in the oven, and I've had my oven heating up at 180 with a fan. And look at that, it's spread out. I left it for 45 minutes. It's a bit cooler in my house today, so I think they're great to start baking. What I'm going to do, I'm going to bake them on this tray, and as I said, I'm going to put the metal one in the middle to hold it together. I'm going to fill the metal one up with some water. I usually use a ramekin, but I thought I could just pop some boiling water in there, and I'm going to give the tops of them a little bit of a slit just to let the pressure release when it lifts up. I'm not going to do an egg wash or a milk wash or anything. I'm just going to bake them as they are for 35 minutes on the middle shelf. I can't lift and talk as the water is spilling around. My oven just went off, so I'm just going to grab the bread out. And they smell delicious. I need to wait till they're completely cool before I cut into one. So I'm just going to leave them on the bench here. After about 10-15 minutes, when I can touch them, I'll wrap them in some towels so I can keep the outside edge soft. If that doesn't worry you and that you want them crunchy, that's fine. I'll just try and lift one up so I can show you what it looks like. So one side went out a little bit, but it'll be fine. Look at that. Very delicious. So actually what I'll do is I need to head off shortly and go and play tennis. So what I'll do, I will cut it open and pop some photos above once it cools down. And I hope you've enjoyed my Swedish festive bread full of spices. Let me know in the comments below if you give it a go. So hej då from Sweden. Thanks for watching.